Lionized freebooters, this is internet personality Vangelus, and Transformers Legacy United went into a sheer, narrow niche when the Lion brought out Thundertron from the Prime universe for its Voyager class. Because, let's be real, that's only a few steps short of doing a new version of Prime Universe Rumble, the red and blue toy-only car Decepticon that some of you are now scrambling to say you absolutely always remembered. Thundertron made it to the pseudo-Prime aligned Mythos novels, and apparently nearly made it onto the show, maybe, but this is some legitimate nichery that piqued my nerdiest curiosity when the figure was announced.
This video was sponsored in part by ToyHacks.com. Use the code 40th anniversary through the month of August 2024 for 15% off your order of labels and other paraphernalia. Using the code supports the channel. Supporting the channel feeds the machine.
Thundertron still turns into a lion, for whatever reason, but in Legacy United, that quadrupedal alt mode is notably more Liger Zero than before, wearing its Zoids at home aesthetic proudly. Beast modes are always an odd balance of factors to look at in a Transformers mainline, but Thundertron manages to avoid major pitfalls in how little he looks like a dude on all fours. The bold color combo built on a foundation of stark white and deep blue plays winterly well even on this mode, partly because the greebly blady Zoidsy sculpt only really asks for the most basic of color layouts. The silvery plate on Thundertron's spine sticks out a bit, but it also allows for sword storage. Functionality does a lot to explain a rogue color patch. Oh, and for the true connoisseurs who are about to ask this question, yes, you can have Thundertron rock his hidden peg leg in lion mode. Many lions that turn into robots in Transformers tend to have a lot of limb-for-limb exchanges, and Thundertron does turn his legs into legs, but he does a mathematically satisfying number of steps to do so, having a major move in each major leg chunk from thigh to toe. The offset thigh swivel is some delicious geometric simplicity that helps widen the lion hips, or shrink the robot hips in this case. The frontal limbs are a unique twist, however, as they completely compress to get inhaled by the robot shoulder pads. This is an immensely satisfying part of the transformation, both mathematically and geometrically, and adds a key layer of pizzazz that one would hope for from a Voyager-sized feline-moded Cybertronian. There are so many cool little peg and tab locks involved in the center mass conversion, freeing the robot arms for their grand unfurl while the rest of the lion mass reshapes and folds down to form Thundertron's torso. On the whole, I did not expect the Captain's transformation to be so involved and satisfying. It was such a pleasant surprise, especially highlighted by the bot mode shoulder pads and the lion mode torso locks. Legacy United Thundertron's robot mode is based on one of the character's preliminary sketches by Emiliano Santalucia, with declawed shoulder pads and a slightly more traditional Transformers robot face. Whether or not this is to evergreenify him like many other Prime Universe characters in Legacy, it does make him a bit meatier and a bit less busy to look at. Proportionally, he's quite clean and balanced when you focus on his limbs and ignore the fluff. However, the fluff is there, so yeah, his shoulder pads are a little bit floaty. But I love his broad and layered chest, and let out a giggle when I consider his coattails and hip skirts, for all the piracy they imply. The darker blue still plays well with the overall palette, and I dig how much it contrasts the frosty white torso mass and formal white gloves. That darker blue and the head sculpt are both a bit divisive amongst the Thundertron hardcores, but I don't mind it. The beard has been fleshed out to suit the wider and evergreenier face, and I like the little pair of scars under one of his eyes. Also, mildly moot point, it turns out they made a more toy-accurate head sculpt as well. It's in a multi-pack. Thundertron's sword is straightforwardly 5mm, but it can also power up by combining with his right foot, though I'm not entirely sure what this accomplishes, as it barely resembles a guard. You know what? It accomplishes 2012-era nostalgia. 2012 was 12 years ago. Digest that for a sec, while I also point out that ripping off his foot reveals a peg leg. Yar har pirate, it's also a thing the 2012 version did. Aside from still being able to use the storage mounting point for the sword, now located on his coattail, Thundertron's shoulder pads have a subtle and related asymmetry. While one has a predictable 5mm port, the other has two little slots. these happen to line up perfectly with a Siege-era Bat-type plank robot such as Rat-Bat or Wing Thing, allowing Thundertron to walk around with a shoulder pet. I do really wish his sword was able to interact with the peg holes on his side skirts because, dang it, I want to hang it from his hip! I don't ask for much! As a Legacy United Voyager, Thundertron's got a ball socket neck, which has a decent amount of range, mostly for looking up and down, not very much emotive waggle. His shoulder pads can do their own thing, really. His actual shoulders are on universal hinged setup with a single hinge elbow that can bend in pretty tight past 90 degrees with a bicep swivel and a wrist swivel. Can be a little bit difficult sometimes to get at it on its own with these claw things, but whatever. There is also a waist joint in here. You just gotta make sure you know what you're grabbing, because there are parts attached to the lower half and there are parts attached to the upper half, as you can see there. Stuff's gonna bang together a little bit, but it's just enough to get my operating word for a lot of this, some emotion out of what's going on. Also, if you really try, you can kind of make the lion mouth a little bit active in robot mode. I don't know why you'd want to, but hey, you know, visual storytelling. These side hip skirts are on ball socket joints. They are very wide range. You can do whatever you want with those. The tail coat, unfortunately, can't really move much unless you undo this entire hinge, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It also lets you waggle the tail, but you can't fold the tail all the way up because it'll bang into this stuff, and you are de-transforming Thundertron a bit if you do want this to move back out of the way. Whatever you choose to do, you've got access to fully active hip joints with a thigh swivel that you saw in the transformation, and then if you don't want the thighs to, you know, get wider, there is a different pseudo thigh swivel at the very bottom right above the knee hinge, which bends in, again, like the elbow, a nice tight just past 90 degrees. The feet have got joints, is what I'll say. This one has got an ankle tilt and a different ankle tilt. And it can't slide around from side to side. This one can, because it's the one that comes off. However, this does not have an ankle tilt from side to side. It simply has one that's forward and backwards, but that is attached to the foot, so if you pull it off, the peg can't tilt. Do you want the peg to tilt? Odd question, I know. By the way, this peg is, if I recall correctly, 3mm compatible. So you can have blast effects coming off of, you know, the peg leg, or I guess you could use that as a pseudo foot if you really want to. Interesting, understated feature. But that's about the whole scope of Thundertron's articulation. None of it is, like, mind-boggling. I don't feel anything is majorly missing. I think that he actually crams in a waist joint that otherwise probably wouldn't be there. I appreciate how much range there is available, but that's his robot mode. What about that lion mode? Well, the lion has got the robot mode's legs, for lack of better terms, so if you move the still ambulant hip skirts out of the way and waggle the now very waggleable all the way forwards tail, makes you think it would transform out of the way. You've still got those hip joints, you've still got the knee joints, you've also got this transformation joint, and you've got whichever version of the ankle joints are available to you. So the rear legs are actually pretty posable. The front legs have got these and these. But if you detach them from these peg connections, that shoulder pad joint I was joking about before becomes a sort of full-on lion mode shoulder joint. So the four limbs on Thundertron's lion mode are capable of some kind of wild, if vaguely unstable posing. Also, the mouth opens and closes. The waist joint and everything else in the middle here, they're all locked up now, but you get 4 decent limbs and a mouth when Thundertron's a lion, so that's better than some other quadrupeds. It's wild that Thundertron made it back to a Transformers mainline, and double wild that the Star Raiders, knee Seekers, with a whole extra Thundertron, are an entire retailer capsule in 2024. But focusing back on the solo release of the Captain, I think he was low-key one of the strongest pieces of Legacy United's first wave. Where Animated Optimus had me more excited, Thundertron was a delightful surprise of interesting functionality and solid hand feel, suffering mostly for feature featuring in novels that I still haven't read, and not looking a lot more like the 2012 toy that he used to have that also featured in novels that I still haven't read. And hey, if you really prefer the look of the toy that came out in Prime Robots in Disguise, a hook-handed variant with that figure's head has been released in a fairly dense 3-pack, sharing his box with fellow Star Raiders Calcitron and Nightstrike. While you all argue about 2 Thundertrons hitting shelves in the same year, I'll just sit over here grumbling that I'd better get a Legacy Go Prime out of the deal. I deserve it! Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I want to throw an extra yar-har to all me membership mateys and Patreon privateers for their direct support. Thanks to them, I can bravely and courageously declare how few books I've read on a public platform like this.